Welcome to the video lecture series offered by the PG Department of English, Pioneer College, Pioneer. The chapter I'm going to discuss today is titled Blackout, written by the Jamaican writer Roger Mays. This is a short story which is included in the text Discoursing Diversities, Readings on Democracy and Secularism, which is prescribed for the third semester Common English students of Kannur University. Moving on to the story or the writer Roger Mays. Roger Mays was a journalist, playwright, novelist, short story writer, and he was also an activist who engaged or who participated in various socio movements against colonialism, as well as encouraged people to agitate against colonialism in whatever ways possible. I would like to mention an article that was published by Roger Mays in 1944, which ended up in him being imprisoned for almost 6 months. The article was titled Now We Know, which largely denunciated British colonization in very strong terms. What he said in that, the main point that he actually said in that, or referred or mentioned in that particular article, was that he, as the representative of the Jamaican people, said that they knew what the World War II or the British were doing in the name of World War II, and World War II was not a movement or a war for freedom as it was called. Rather, it was another movement, or it was not a movement, it was another military attack which was initiated or which was started to preserve the imperial forms of power and control of the British or British colonial powers. So, as part of this article, because of this article, he was imprisoned for 6 months. His sense of self dignity and social justice, that was very paramount in him. This also led him this also led to his being involved in another socio-religious movement which was called Rastafari movement. It was a socio-religious movement believed, which was based on a belief in a single God, Jah, who was supposed to reside in every individual. This was another means of cultural resistance that Roger Mays became part of. With this, I move on to the short story titled Blackout. Blackout is a story which addresses issues like racism, problems of engendering, and other such issues of social discrimination and exclusion largely. The story is set in a place in Jamaica where there is a blackout going on as part of where there is the city which is referred to in the story is under partial blackout, as the street lights had been turned off on account of the wartime policy of preserving electricity. So a war was going on, and as part of preserving electricity for other uses, there was a partial blackout in the city. At this point, a woman is a white American woman. She is seen waiting in a bus stop, waiting for a bus. And although there were rumors about the neighborhood that there were kinds of assaults happening, rumors of assaults happening against women. So there were several such rumors that were going on about assaults happening against women in that particular neighborhood. And the time was night, but despite all these things, the woman, this white American woman, was not actually very nervous, or she wasn't disturbed in any way. Why? Because she knew that she was standing in a neighborhood where there were a series of respectable houses, where, and if she had faced, if she did face a problem, or if she did face any kind of assault, she just needed to raise her voice and cry out for help, and she was sure that at least some of the people in the nearby neighborhood would come and save her. So she was not actually nervous about being alone in that part of at that time of the night, in a place which was in partial blackout. So as she was standing there waiting for the bus, she saw somebody approaching her, and when that person reached near her, she realized that it was a silhouette of a tall person, and the tall person had a stoop. So he was coming near, or he was approaching her, and when he reached nearby, she suddenly realized that he was a black, and suddenly she was, unconsciously, she became on her guard. And this person on his hand, he actually had approached for a light, so as to light his cigarette. And he had a very small stub of cigarette in his hand, not a full cigarette, only a small stub of cigarette in his hand, which he wanted to light. And so he approached the lady whom he saw at night, and he approached her for a light. So this woman was already, smoking, and so he thought that naturally she would be having a light. So he approached her, but this lady was not having a matchbox or lighter, and she had actually lighted her cigarette from her previous cigarette that she was smoking. So what she did instead was she held out the cigarette that she was smoking, so that this black man could, light his cigarette directly from this woman's cigarette. So she held out the cigarette that she was smoking, which was a full cigarette. So, but what happened was, yeah, this person, this man, this black man, he lit his cigarette from the cigarette of the woman, and everything was going fine. When suddenly the next action on the part of the woman created some sense of discomfort for both of them. What happened was the woman actually uh, threw away the cigarette which she had just started to use or started smoking. And the black man, suddenly, seeing this, he knew that this was some response due to the racist attitude of the woman. The woman was actually being racist. Why? Because since she had, or since she had allowed the black man to light his cigarette from her own, she felt that her own cigarette had to be thrown, because it was no longer worthy to be smoked, because it was given to a black man in order to light his cigarette. So it is better that it be thrown. So that is why she actually threw this cigarette away. But this was an action that was not appreciated by the black man. Having been, subject to such several forms of such racism from his childhood onwards, he was actually sensitive to such sorts of behavior, and suddenly the atmosphere became very, very tense. And the woman also began to feel the tension. And she suddenly she asked him, why are you not leaving, why are you staying here? And the person, this black man, he sort of replied that, I mean, this is not anybody's private space, it's a public space, so I have the right to be here. And if you were not a woman, if you I would have, this is the sentence that he uses, it is a good thing you are a woman, he said. And if I were a man, as man to man maybe, I would give you something to think about, he said, still in that quiet, even voice. In America, they lynched them for less than that, she thought. So the woman was actually very incensed at, angered at hearing this. So suddenly, her superiority arising from her, white color, uh, that made her think that this person was, how dare this male, how dare this black man speak back to me like that. So this was what she was thinking, or this was what the superiority that came from her whiteness made her think. So she thought, in America they lynched them for less than that. So how dare this person come here and talk to me like this? If it had been in America, they would have been lynched for this. So, so this racism that is there in her unconscious starts working. At the same time, the male ego, it is a male ego inside, or which is there inside the man, that makes him say a dialogue that, it's good thing you are a woman, or as man to man maybe I would give you something to think about. So you have these social constructions like masculinity and problems, and the superiority that race gives to a woman. All these issues are being addressed in various ways through these lines. So finally, as these conversations are happening, a bus comes by, and she gets into the bus. The white woman gets into the bus, and the bus starts moving. So this woman actually has a feeling, or she wants to look back. She wants to turn and look and see how, or see what the black man was doing. Was he looking back at her, or was he, yeah, was he looking at her? What was he doing? So she wanted to know. So she wanted to turn back and look at him, but then she felt that that wouldn't be a good way. That wouldn't be a good behavior. And what would other passengers in the bus think about her if she looked back at him? So she controlled her, her desire to look back. But if she had looked back, or if she had turned back, what she would have seen, or the sight that she would have seen, what would that be? It would have been the sight of the black man. Uh, yeah, so what was the black man doing during this time? So he was actually searching for the almost full cigarette that this woman had discarded in the gutter. So he was actually searching in the gutter for this cigarette that this woman had discarded, because he couldn't afford to, throw away a full cigarette. Thank you. Now I'll move on to the short answer questions given in the text. First question: what is the context of the partial blackout? The war policy of conserving electricity had led to the partial blackout. Second question: is the young woman's confidence purely personal? If not, how can it be explained? No. Answer: no. The confidence of the woman comes also from her being white. The practice of racism ensures a superiority to the white skinned woman, which translates into confidence. Is the encounter purely something between two persons? If not, why? Answer: no. The encounter is between two persons belonging to two races. One race that has been accorded a privileged status on account of their white skin, and the other dehumanized because of their dark skin. What does May suggest about the black man and the woman by a mention of the black man's eyes? The eyes answer: the eyes of the black man suggested curiosity, hesitancy, and perplexity. This is suggestive of how racism makes a person diffident in public platforms and social interactions. Fifth question. The text says the young woman expected any sort of adventure in one of these tropical islands of the West Indies. What ideological baggage does she carry with her? She carries the ideological baggage of racism, which prompts her to assume that where there are black skinned communities, there would be violent, uncivilized behavior. Sixth question. The black man seemed quite decent in his own way and harmless, but still he made her uncomfortable. What is the source of her unease? Answer: the source of the woman's unease is the color of the man's skin. Seventh question. The half cigarette that had been clenched and saved for future consumption, does it signify something about social class? Answer: the half smoked cigarette saved for later use may be suggestive of the impoverished background of the black man. He probably comes from a lower class black community who cannot afford to throw away a half used cigarette. Thank you.